Welcome back to RealClear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. We're pleased to welcome Alex Markovsky, author of Liberal Bolshevism, America Did Not Defeat Communism, She Adopted It. Alex, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Alex, I just finished reading your new book, Analyzing American Politics, and I found it so dark and foreboding that I had to have you on to explain yourself. Before we get into your thesis, perhaps we can dig into your personal story. You were born in 1944 in the old Soviet Union to a father who was a prominent member of the Communist Party, and yet he planted the seeds that turned you into a refusenik. Take us back and tell us about your dad.
Well, I think we can go back to Ronald Reagan, who once said, how do you tell a communist? Ronald Reagan said, communist is the one who reads Marx and Lenin. And how do you tell the anti-communist? And Reagan responded, it is someone who understands Marx and Lenin. So I guess Dad understood Marx and Lenin well enough to realize that it was a dead end, ideologically, economically, and socially.
Yet he adapted himself to it to make a life.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's I guess one of his great accomplishments, to be dedicated communist during the day and anti-communist during the night.
In 1964, your father pulled strings to get you into the University of Marxism-Leninism to study political science. That must have been a pretty big deal for a Jewish student in the USSR at the time. How did you react?
Well, first, it was a shock, because knowing my father, knowing his views on communism, on socialism, whatever, that was a shock, and I reacted accordingly. I said, well, Dad, are you out of your mind? Why do I have to study this crap? And his response shocked me even more because he said, I said, you want me to graduate in the art of demagoguery and lies? That's exactly his words, And he said, son, that's what communist ideology is all about. If you want to survive, you have to understand the philosophy of your enemies.
And you became quite a model student at the university.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I like it. It was, I tell you why I like it, because in that, what I call the intellectual desert of the Soviet Union, I could read books and publications that very few people had access to. And it was very interesting, Some of those publications were American publications, like a magazine America. But some of them I discovered, there were Soviet publications for very, I would say, restricted number of readers. And I could read it there, and my father would bring me some magazines, and I could read it at home, and he would take it back.
So you really got yourself immersed in the belly of the beast.
Yes.
After completing your education, you enraged everybody by applying to emigrate to Israel. You write that without your detailed knowledge of Marxist philosophy, you never would have survived the 8 years of arrests and KGB interrogations you went through before they finally let you go. How so?
Well, you see, as I wrote in the book, these Marxists, those Philistines, I call them, they go by the book. So if you understand Marxism, you know how they would react under certain circumstances. So Marxism teaches them that, in order to control the masses, leaders have to instill two things, fear and hope. They say a person who does not afraid or lose hope becomes socially dangerous and needs to be dealt with. That's the person I was. That's a person I try to portray myself to them, that I am not afraid and I have no hope, but I don't really actively dangerous to them, you know. I just want them to get rid of me.
And they figured they were better off with you gone.
Well, you see, at that point, if you remember, there was so-called Jackson-Vanik Amendment to the trade with the Soviet Union, when they allowed to trade grain in exchange for a certain number of Jews to be released. So I figure, you know, instead of sending me to Siberia or madhouse, they would say, look, you know, this guy is not actively dangerous, and since we still have to get rid of some Jews, you know, we have to exchange them. Why not this one?
How did your father avoid being denounced and thrown out of the Communist Party, losing his job and everything he had worked for after you left?
Oh, he blamed them. He turned it around and he said, look, you know, he said, I understand. Well, first he said, look, it's my personal tragedy.
Right.
Second, he said, look, it's tragedy for all of us. Because I thought I did everything right. You know, I sent him to Communist University. He graduated from Soviet school, from Soviet university. Then he studied Marxism. So where did we go wrong? Okay? So they got the message, and they didn't want to make it a big deal out of it.
So, Alex, exactly what is liberal Bolshevism, and why do you believe it's the foundation of the modern Democratic Party?
Well, I think it's obvious, but look, the Bolsheviks, they were predecessors of communists. So they were actually communists. They called themselves Bolsheviks first, and then they created Communist Party, and they became communists. And they imposed socialism through indiscriminate terror. They killed millions of people in order to reach to the horizon of communism, as I write in the book, only to realize that it was just a horizon, you know, imaginary lines that gets further as one gets closer. So they never got there, but they killed a lot of people in the process. So Obama came up with an ingenious scheme. Instead of terror, he used dependence. Because hands that feeds you controls you, right?
Yeah, but that wasn't Obama. That started with FDR.
Exactly right. You see, in the book I said, well, it started, you know, with FDR, and slowly, you know, from generation to generation, we were getting closer and closer to completely socializing this country. Obama closed the deal. Also was supposed to close the deal.
You write that he was arguably the most consequential Democratic president of the last century, really embodying the Marxist ideology. Did he study this along the way?
Oh, yes. He studied it. I could see it from his speeches. He studied it at university. He realized early on that if he followed Marxism to the letter, in order to establish socialism, he needed revolutionary force. And Bolsheviks use proletarians, if you remember, you know, laborers that can have nothing to lose except their chains, as a revolutionary force. But United States did not have proletarians.
Right.
They were gone many years ago. So what else he could use? And he came up with this concept, dependence. You don't have to have a revolution to impose socialism. You can do it through taxation, regulation, and dependence. And you remember, you know, in my book I said 3 planks of socialism.
Yeah. So
that's how he wanted to do it. I think he was extremely successful in it. And I don't know whether we will ever get rid of it.
Obama's former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, is famous for having said, never let a crisis go to waste. You call this a direct echo of Vladimir Lenin and Gregor Strasser. Historically, how have demagogues leveraged crises to liquidate the opposition and expand their power?
Well, because a crisis creates a turmoil. So what I'm always saying is that Democrats are in need of turmoil, but Americans are in need of great America. That's what Donald Trump came in.
So all of these crises you think are manufactured or just taken advantage of?
No, they've taken advantage for the most of it, but they greatly been exacerbated by the Democratic Party. They use a Lenin script how to change society. And Lenin taught them that cause the problem, spread the misery, send a cadre of professional community organizers to unite all the angry and disenchanted spirits to fuel the unorganized revolt. That's exactly what is happening here with Occupy Wall Street, hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter. It's all organized, which I predicted, by the way, 2 years ago. In my post, I called it From Lenin to Obama.
Alex, you write that slogans play a prominent role in Marxist-Leninist political doctrine, and perhaps you can analyze a few slogans for us. Let's start with the one that carried an obscure backbench senator all the way into the Oval Office. Hope and change.
Well, the slogan played a very important role in Bolshevik revolution in Russia. You know, when you utilize a revolt, you utilize a discontent, you have to express yourselves in very simple terms, like land to peasants, peace to the people, bread to hungry. That was the Bolshevik slogans. Later, they came turn out to be not true, but it's simple. It's easy to understand. And if you are desperate, you know, if you are in trouble, somebody says, well, we have a hope and change. What it means, nobody could understand, and nobody was explained what it means, but sounds good.
It became iconic.
Yes. If you have a good slogan, it moved the masses. Demagoguery and lies, you know, that's what my father always say, you know, it moves the nation.
Hope and change was followed by the winning slogan, yes, we can. How do you deconstruct that one?
Yes, we can. Well, again, you know, in a way it's meaningless. You can say anything. Yes, we can. We can make you rich. We can make you smart. We can make you talented. You know, we can. Well, of course we can't, but look, the sounds good.
Why did it appeal so much to college students?
Well, you know, if you look at the history, young people always been that revolutionary movement for change. You know, they always want to change the world, and maybe it's probably good things overall. But they're easy to be manipulated, and especially in this country when education's been so backward, and people don't know much, especially the young people. It's easy to manipulate them, and socialist movement could be very strong in this environment. You know, we give you free, you know, we give you free education, we give you free health care, we give you free. That sounds great.
After his successful re-election, Obama governed under the slogan "Forward." I understand that slogan has a long history.
Oh, yeah. It's a long history that came from Bolshevik Revolution first, and it's always forward. You don't know where exactly, but forward. It could be into the cliff, but it's forward.
Isn't it tied to something called historical inevitability?
Yeah, you may say that, you know, because we're always looking forward for progress. We think that with time, you know, we are progressing, and that's been true throughout the history. With every new generation, we have progress, and especially in the last couple of centuries, you know, progress was enormous.
What role did the culture wars play in liberal Bolshevism?
Well, it is very important. You have to destroy the basis of society. You have to impose new moral values. In order to impose the new ones, you have to destroy the old ones. So, cultural war was very important. You demonize your opponent. You shame them. Yes, it's very important. It destroys your values. It destroys the established order.
Alex, wealth redistribution is a central plank of liberal Bolshevism. The Democratic Party is proudly wedded to that idea, elevating leaders like Senator Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Does the appeal of income redistribution become irresistible once a majority of Americans are receiving checks from the government?
Of course. That's dependence. That is the essence of Obama's scheme, Obama's strategy. It creates dependence. You remember, what the slogan of communism, or definition of communism, from each according to his abilities and to each according to his needs. So it gives you some false notions that the person with limited abilities can fulfill his or her unlimited needs. It's irresistible.
How do you explain the Jewish love affair with socialism?
It's very difficult to explain. You can go to, it has probably a religious beginning. However, it probably has a lot to do with suppression of Jews, with persecution of Jews. But what really happened, the Jews were at the dawn of communist revolution in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually, you can say that it was Bolshevik Jewish revolution. The Bolshevik revolution was a Jewish revolution.
But it ended up victimizing them.
Oh, yes, but Jews has always been on the wrong side of history. Let's just look at anything. They always been on the wrong side of history. It's very difficult to explain, but that's what it is. And they've been prosecuted the first. The first Soviet government was full of Jews. Probably 80% of them were Jews. And they was the first to be exterminated in best tradition of Marxist camaraderie.
You can say that now, and I don't sense any bitterness in your voice. I mean, your family, people you know, must have all been through this. How do you deal with this personally?
I see no problem with it, really, personally. I think that there was something wrong with Jews, for the most part.
Wow.
They are obsessed with equality, they're obsessed with fairness, and I think there is some guilt in it, that they really been probably more talented than the rest of us. And they live better than the rest of the population. And they feel guilty for it.
So do you think there's a little bit of self-loathing involved?
Yeah, I think they like begging for forgiveness.
Interesting.
Forgiveness that we survived Holocaust, forgiveness that we live better than others, forgiveness that we richer than overall than others. I think that has a lot to do with it. But I'm not a psychiatrist.
You must have been very shocked and surprised by the outcome of the presidential election, which happened after the publication of your book. Let's analyze winning and losing slogans one more time. Hillary Clinton had every advantage going into the election. Why did Make America Great Again beat I'm with her?
Well, I think I am with her really meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. On the other hand, Trump has a great slogan. I think Americans are very nostalgic about American greatness, the respect that America used to have in the world, and that was very timely, very timely.
Toward the end of your book, you lament that unless a tremendous effort is made to unwind the course of liberal Bolshevism, the U.S. is doomed. Does Donald Trump's surprise victory over both the Democratic Party and the Republican establishment give you any hope?
Well, first I see it from ideological standpoint. I think it was another chapter in that epic struggle between socialism and capitalism. And we can say that, okay, this battle been won, but I don't think we won the war because that enormous appeal of socialism.
Do you think his attack on the culture war will yield some results in taking that weapon away from the Democrats?
Well, look, I think it's temporary. We just bought some time. I don't know, maybe it will go for 20, 30 years, and then we will have another battle for the wealth distribution.
So you see the war with socialism as a never-ending struggle?
No, never ending. As long as there is a capitalism, as long as there is an equality, socialism will maintain its appeal. And What we don't understand, what nobody says about. By the way, that is a disease that Republicans got.
Yeah.
I talked to a number of Republicans, some of them quite prominent, who would say, Alex, but you have to agree with us that we have to do something about inequality. No, we don't. Because inequality is a locomotive of progress.
Well, that's something you don't hear from a lot of people.
What moving the society is inequality, because it gives everyone, poor, rich, and in between, something to look forward to. You know what I like to say, that nothing God distributes so fairly as brains. Nobody complains. And so unfairly as money. Nobody has enough. So there is appeal to have more. And that creates inequality. But that's the engine of progress.
Well, Alex, it was a delight reading your book. It was rather hair-raising in many parts, but I do appreciate you coming on the show to share your views with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
That was Alex Markovsky, author of Liberal Bolshevism, America Did Not Defeat Communism, She Adopted It, here on RealClear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. You can check out RealClear Radio Hour on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at RealClearFrezza. And while you're at it, take a look at RealClearFuture.com for daily updates on the next big wave of technologies. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Old Boston Restorations, for their support. Old Boston is a boutique property management company in Boston's South End. Visit them online at oldbostonrestorations.com. We'd like to give a shout-out to our newest listeners on Boston Community Radio, WBCA 102.9 FM, which is now airing our program Wednesday nights. That wraps up our show for this week. Please join us next week, same time, same station, when we dig into the scientific fraud behind the Flint, Michigan man-caused water system disaster. See you then.